guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis.
The first one is titled, Neighbor Built a Legal Trailer Park Near My Property and Trashed My Land. This is a story about how I got the best revenge imaginable on the people that used to be my neighbors. I use that term loosely because first of all the land next to my property wasn't owned by anybody, but that didn't stop this family from parking their 3 trailers there. The simplest way to describe these people would be the term white trash. I don't really have high standards for people because I am a farmer. And I know that some rich snobs probably look down on me as well. These people though were next level and spent their days drinking, screaming, cursing, and more drinking. It turned out that they actually did have a job and owned some waste removal company. I guess they were just busy spending all the money on beer. I also saw plenty of lotto tickets lying around that I can only assume came from them. Now I basically hated these neighbors and wanted exactly zero to do with them. They weren't on my land, so I just tried to mind my own business and take care of what I needed to do. I have some chickens, some cows, and a small area for vegetables. I just wanted to be out here living my best life despite them. The first problem happened when I caught one of them trying to steal my chicken. One night I heard a ruckus and went outside to see one of them near where I fence in my chicken coop trying to cut it open. I can only assume the plan was to steal a chicken, but the second that he saw me this guy bolted back to his trailer. I couldn't ignore these people and had to keep on high alert in case they tried to pull anything else. That wasn't the only issues with these neighbors though. I understand that some people aren't exactly neat, heck. I'm a little messy myself. Now since they didn't own the land they didn't actually get trash picked up by the town and instead had to deal with it themselves. This ranged from them moving it out where I keep my garbage to doing nothing at all. I didn't care if they put trash out with mine because it was getting taken away anyway. I guess it became too hard for them though because they just started letting things pile up outside near the property line. A mountain of trash started to form, and I was disgusted going anywhere near that side of my property. It was a huge health hazard and that was when I decided I had enough with these guys. I was going to get some revenge and teach them a lesson. Now since they were very loud I could always hear them bragging among themselves how they didn't declare any taxes for their business. This way they didn't pay anything for it and talked about how much money they would save doing this. I used this knowledge to my advantage and made a little call into the IRS that the company doing waste management for most of the town wasn't declaring anything. I knew after a while this took effect because I could hear them yelling from one trailer to the other about the IRS auditing them and which one of them let it slip what was going on. They didn't even suspect I had anything to do with it. And I wasn't done. This next thing I don't know if I would really classify it as revenge or just doing the right thing. I know that I briefly mentioned how horrible the conditions these people were living in before, but I neglected to say that they had kids living there too. Kids that I never saw go to school and were mostly kept locked in the trailers all day and night. Kids that were always dirty and surrounded by adults just getting drunk and leaving trash everywhere. They were mostly kept in the trailers and the few times I saw a kid they looked sick to me. I couldn't just look at this and do nothing about it, instead I called Child Protective Services about my concern. A black car pulled up and a lady in a suit started knocking on the doors of the trailers and speaking to the people inside. I guess the conditions were bad enough that they actually took the kids away. I know that foster care isn't the best environment, but please trust me when I say that I wasn't getting their kids taken away as some sort of sick revenge. They clearly weren't being cared for and I wasn't going to just sit around and watch that display. In fact, seeing that made me even angrier at them and wanted to give them one last piece of revenge. This one bigger than anything else. Since I had livestock and crops it was within my rights to have a nice big compost piles on my property, courtesy of my cows. I decided that the perfect place to put it would be right on the property line between me and the trailer park neighbors. For those that don't know what these compost piles smell like, you don't want to. Farmers are a little more used to it, but these people certainly had this as a new smell for them. I hadn't seen them hanging outside of their trailers for a couple of weeks because it smelled too bad for them to go outside. For the first time in months, I didn't hear screaming and cursing coming from them. I guess the smell finally got too much for them because that was the final straw for them to pack up their trailers and move out. I drove them away. And I didn't feel bad about it one bit. They didn't own the land, were making it a disgusting place, and even dragging innocent children into the whole thing. I don't know what they did after that, but I want to think and believe the best. I want to imagine that they got their acts together and found a better place to live. I want to imagine they were able to get their children back and treat them right from then on. The only thing I do know for sure was that their company was not in charge of the town's waste management anymore, and looking up online, I can't even find it. So, they either went bankrupt or started up again under a different name and let the scam continue. All I know is that I am enjoying the peace and quiet that I bought this land for in the first place. The chickens and cows are the only neighbors that I need at the end of the day. If someone buys that piece of land, good, but if someone else takes it over and starts trouble, I have no problems getting some revenge again. The next one is a revenge story. It is titled, "You Should Always Pay Your Accountant." My buddy is an accountant, he has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs bars in 2 different cities. Client was always shady, always slow on payment, etc. I was also a customer of one of the bars. They had poker game that I would play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy house, having a few beers. And he's witching about non-payment from a client. I ask who, he doesn't want to say. But it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name, we'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow. Scott isn't paying you? He then says Scott is saying business is way down. And I think that's odd. I've been going to one Scott place and every Thursday is packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, really? I go, yay. He does this new cash discount, think, 15% off your tab if you pay cash. My buddy goes, really? I tell him about my experience at Scott Bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later my buddy calls me up and says, you going to Scott's Bar to play poker? I said, yay. He says, can I join? I go, sure. He joins, we get a few drinks in us, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, he decides to crash there. On the way over he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue. The reason why he suspects Scott is offering cash discount is cause cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go all 4 of Scott's establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, pieces together. How much alcohol he's buying, versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, etc. Keep in mind he has access to all this info. And he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts plus a little bit of cash to cover his cost of his business, to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food, etc. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he's suspecting Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35%, 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more, and he figures in the last year Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35%, 40%. But he's also been underreporting his sales by at least 20%, 25% for years on end. Simply put, there is no way Scott is going through as much product, and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers. That's he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant. Which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars that he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me an exact number. My friend decides duck getting repayment from Scott, let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he'd earn form the IRS far out. Weighs the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15–30% of what they collect. So with the assistance of a lawyer my friend gathers all the evidence he has Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with the IRS. During this time my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now this part gets boring cause there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth. This went back and forth. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott, and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS by about $4.5 million. Now my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer. his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at $675,000, $1.3 million. Keep in mind it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply says, "I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me." The next one is titled, "Should Not Have Denied My Employee Claim." I am a typical simple guy who just likes relaxing and was born with the proverbial silver spoon in my mouth. I am the black sheep of my family and a middle child to boot, double whammy. But I at least have a little brains and some luck, which I kind of use on a day-to-day basis. Due to my parents' connections, I managed to get into lucrative schools in my country, did my military service and was promoted upward to captain, and later on was shipped off to college out of country. I have never been too close with many people apart from my circle of friends. And I prefer it that way. After my college, I was employed in government, you guessed it, family connections, and after a few years was able to use my name to get ahead and meet people who helped me set up several businesses in my area, a coastal city, where this story happens. The money I used was generally allowances, small inheritance from my late grandma, some investments, a fund that was started when I was a baby, and money gifted to me by family, basically an attempt not leave me broke enough to embarrass them even though I'm a simple low-maintenance fellow lol. My businesses are booming since the coastal area we live in attracts a lot of tourists, local and international, and of course some locals who wish to mingle with the tourists to get green cards, pen pals, spouses and such. Typical coastal city, I guess. The incident. As a proprietor of my businesses, I have most if not all of my staff on salary since it's the best way for them to gain benefits and is easier for me as a business owner tax-wise. Tipping is more of a gift typically since we do not have a tipping culture. And I have my staff on comprehensive medical insurance, which has additional dental and optical on top of the national governmental healthcare medical scheme. Our government hospitals provide all services free, but wait times for elective surgeries are exhausting. We also have a mandatory legal requirement to provide employees with retirement benefit savings. Minimum of 21 working days leave. I give 30, and my businesses offer paid overtime, unhindered medical leave for surgery and serious conditions which can be extended, as well as allowances to seek treatment such as chemo or dialysis. One of my female employees, an older lady who is brilliant and had moved up the ranks to manager and was adored by all, was booked for a hysterectomy since, as she told me, she was at risk of cervical cancer as her mother had passed from it a few years back, and since she already had 4 kids it was the most logical step. She did her due diligence and found a private hospital which was in our system where she could have the procedure done. On the planned date she applied for leave days, which we obviously rejected since this fell under the scope of medical leave. She went on to have the procedure successfully and had a quick recovery time. The bill was to be catered for by the company insurance, and we had made sure to get all the necessary pre-authorizations. A few months later she came to work looking distraught, and in all honesty, we thought that she had been told that she had gotten cancer since she had asked for a day off to go for review and tests. But what happened was much worse. She had been given a bill by the hospital since the insurance had refused to pay for it, citing that it was not in the scope of cover. We were livid since we had made sure everything was in effing order. I sent my accounts manager to go have a talk with the insurance people as we tried to calm her down. The manager came back super angry and told me that basically after showing them the evidence the insurance people just told him to buzz off. I decided to personally go visit that office and get a clear understanding of what was happening. They kept me waiting for an hour, and even after that had the audacity to inform me the director from the head office who was in the area had declined to meet me because he was quote-unquote busy. I was pissed to the high heavens. So I decided to go to their head office in the capital city, a 2-hour flight. The head office was no help and informed me that they had revised their policy and that it was not covered. I asked when the policy was revised. They informed me a month prior. I informed them the surgery was done 5 months prior. And we had all the documentations. They claimed that it was 12 months retrospective. I inquired why I was not informed of it since this was big news. And I have held policies with them, and they told me that they had informed their large clients and would inform the other clients when their insurances were due for renewal. I demanded to speak to their boss, company vice president, since the CEO was not around, and they boldly told me he had no time for me and frankly that, in verbatim, "We are a large company and have no time to argue semantics with low-end clients." If you don't like it, you can frankly leave and find a new insurance company. The revenge. If I had been initially pissed, I was full-blown mad. I was livid and filled with rage. In all my years I may have experienced some disrespect and I accepted it not to make problems. But this time it went too far. I decided in the heat of the moment to switch everything and be done with them. I flew back home and just plain went to the hospital and settled the bill in full and took the receipt to my employee who initially insisted that she would do anything to pay me back. But I refused since it was no way. Her fault and ill be damned if she pays for something that was way out of her control. I had a few days to cool down and talked with my directors. The words still etched on my mind. I asked how long it would take us to switch to another insurance. They went ahead and checked out a few large rivals of the insurance we had and discovered that if we switched it would take 6 months for the new insurance to provide full coverage. The firm we picked, who I'll call New Insurance, offered us a way better deal to the one we had and not only comprehensive cover, dental and optical. They also included mental health cover, physiotherapy and occupational therapy cover, rehabilitative services, mobility device acquisition, prosthetics and wheelchairs for some of the disabled employees, smart cards for direct payment on outpatient visits, kind of like a debit card, and a dedicated team of relationship managers, death and funeral benefits and an expanded coverage area plus up to 6 dependents plus spouse cover. It would cost me a little more. But I didn't really care. The people who dealt with us from our previous insurance, who I'll call Old Insurance, seemed unfazed that I was pulling my company from them since they thought it was just a small business. They looked puzzled when I came in with several people and a few boxes of documents. What they failed to realize was that apart from that one business, which is a restaurant, I have 3 popular bars, a cab company, a hotel resort, cleaning service chain, a building and residential guard service and several rental buildings in the town and around the country. Their shock was compounded when they were informed by the lawyer just who I am, and the shock, awe, confusion and panic when they heard my family name was an extremely satisfying sight. Cue the pleading and attempted negotiations and apologies. It was so big that the news reached their head office, who sent not only their director, the one who was apparently too big to see me, but also their chief legal officer, chief financial officer and president of the company. I somehow also earned a personalized call from their CEO who was abroad. No amount of sweet talking was changing my mind, and by the end of 6 weeks we had completely removed ourselves from the old insurance. It was now a waiting game to the beginning of the new insurance cover, and we really hoped that no one would become unwell by that time. But we were ready just in case. In that waiting time and after the new insurance commenced, I talked to my friends and my family on one of my holiday visits. My older brother's kids adore me, and my family kind of realized they were a-holes to me and are trying to re-enter my life, and thought that was that. Aftermath. My friends and family took my words and also pulled their businesses from the insurance to other insurances. The company took such a huge hit, and when COVID came around and was a big deal, they were barely floating. They went into receivership soon after and were acquired by the insurance I had moved to, who happened to be their greatest rivals. The directors and CEO were given their golden parachutes and resigned, and most of their employees were luckily retained apart from the senior executives, including the ones who told my manager to buzz off. In a cruel twist of irony, the building they were operating on in our town was sold, and if you guessed I purchased it, you would be absolutely correct. I decided to remodel the inside and turn it to a business rental space. All in all, it was a bit of a sweet payback, and wherever they are, I hope those disrespectful guys learned that everyone is human and they are not above anyone, and remember that karma is a cold and heartless witch. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments.